I know you're in there.
Curfew is now in effect. All unauthorized citizens must stay indoors.
Tensions rise as we enter the 213th week of lockdown.
A grim new reality emerges.
COVID-23 has mutated.
Beginning thermal scan.
Hey, whoa, I'm immune! I'm immune!
Worldwide death toll rises to over 110 million.
All infected Americans are being forced into quarantine camps.
Live and direct.
This is Vessel 1.
Vessel 2. Bringing you hemp news.
Okay, so recently we've been discussing the aftermath of the COVID situation. Recently, the state of emergency in Japan has been lifted. People are now trying to get back into the rhythm of things. They out drinking and hanging out, doing their thing. And fortunately, the weather is nice. But the biggest question that came about through this conversation and speaking to other people is the aftermath of everything. After everyone take their second dose and approximately take the booster, what would the future look like in a year or 2 years from now? These are the questions that we're going to ask or try to examine or get a little bit of clarity on. Vessel 1 and Vessel 2 is here trying to bring things to light. Vessel 2, you have anything to say?
Yeah, I look forward to the conversation as always. The topic here today, I think it's on a lot of people's mind. Where we're going, what would it look like when we get there, and how many of us will be there once we get there is the real question that I got. But yeah, let's jump into it and let's see, how we break down this conversation to the point where maybe possibly we can see some solutions at the end.
What does it mean to live off-grid? That is what we're going to be talking about today. From the comments that we get on our videos, I know that there is a lot of confusion out there about what it means to live off-grid. Some people think that if you're going to live off-grid, you have to live like a caveman, right? Cooking your food over an open fire and wearing nothing but animal skins. But is that really what it means to live off-grid? Others seem to think that you have to live in a log cabin that you made with your own hands, out in the woods. You have no contact with the rest of society. Is that what it means to live off-grid? Well, let's see what the dictionary says. Dictionary.com says off-grid, not connected to or using one or more public utilities, as for electricity or water. I think to myself, well, what is a public utility? Wikipedia says that public utilities are natural gas companies, electric companies, telephone companies, water companies, steam companies, and former hydraulic power companies.
Oh, hopefully. Yeah, or at least get some clarity, some answers.
Right.
Okay, let's jump into it. We're now traveling about a year, let's say a year and a half, maybe 2022, 23. If the way things going and what the news has predicted, that they said that, especially in Japan, 60% of the population has been vaccinated. If at least one dose or two doses now. So the question at hand is that what happen to those who didn't? This is one of the questions that's gonna be imperative in the future. Uh, any thoughts, Vessel 2?
Yeah, as far as the goal from what they said, here in Japan, they're looking at hopefully getting around 70%. So
That's
the 30% that I guess are not, what is the game plan, and how will the discrimination go down is what I'm wondering, because it kind of seems like if these breakthrough cases are going to continue, then how are you going to continue to separate the massive?
While vaccine inequity is very much a concern in places like the African continent, it's vaccine hesitancy that is creating another kind of divide within societies. Take this headline in Charleston's Post and Courier newspaper in June, citing a poll that half of vaccinated South Carolinians will stay away from unvaccinated friends and colleagues.
Unvaccinated people in Germany may soon face restrictions. That is the warning given by Chancellor Merkel's chief of staff. In an interview, Helga Braun said, if we have a high rate of infection despite our testing procedures, then the unvaccinated will have to reduce their contacts. That could mean that certain options, like restaurants, cinemas, and visits to stadiums, would no longer be available.
From each other.
Well, let's do the math and the breakdowns. Well, from what we know is that for those who are, the plan is to supposedly they supposed to have the Bill Gates pass was it a passport or financial passport that connects you with your medical history and your financial side of things. Am I correct?
I've heard that, but here
Right.
they're pushing what they call My Number, which is their version of a social security number, and considering the fact that they keep saying majority of the Japanese people don't have the official plastic chipped card, that's a problem. It's delaying progress in whatever plans they have for the usage of this My Number system. But yeah, I think it's all about control, and once they're able to issue out that card to everybody, then they will be able to further control and make it seem like it's for the people, but we'll see how authoritarian it gets.
Well, yeah. So from that point, it seems that they will have control of the financial. So it looks like it's going to be a cashless society, and then it looks like they will have control over food and the medical scenario. Okay, so the question now lies on the opposite side of the fence. For those who that haven't or won't or refuse the jab, where would that leave them in society? Will we still have two types of currencies? the medical scenario. How would you take care of important things such as going to the doctor if you have any cold or sickness, or dental, or or any other important things that you need to take care of through the medical system. Also, looking at the finance again, if they're talking about a cashless society, currency will be obsolete now? This is the question. And if so, how would those who are not part of that system survive? Will we barter? Will we have to start providing for ourselves, grow our own food and vegetables? The internet is going to be another thing that we're going to have to look at communication wise. This is what I'm talking about.
Hey there, everybody. We're talking about world building today, and the question I have for you is, can a society exist without a government? Let's talk about it in today's episode. Today I'm not really going to talk about tips or tricks. I'm going to talk about world building. There are certain rules that you gotta follow even if your world is fictitious. So today's question, can a society exist without a government? So in this town, there's no government. But what do I actually mean by that? What is a government? So a government, in its most basic form, is just leadership. Have you ever been in a group of friends and then there's one person who steps up and is like, hey, why don't we go to the park today? I'll drive. Everybody chip in $2 for gas money. That guy is essentially the government. That $2 is tax. So being without a government is essentially being in some sort of transitional state. As soon as something bad happens, you'll need a government to deal with it. You'll need leadership to deal with it. We talk about utopias sometimes, and that's sort of the idea of like nothing bad is happening. But if something bad does happen, then you need a government to deal with it. Being without a government just means this is like a short period that you don't need anybody to deal with anything. Everybody's just minding their own business. But as soon as something goes wrong, you need a government.
Hey, 42 here. There's something timeless and romantic about living on the ragged edge of civilization. Whether you prefer the American Old West, the final frontier of space, or somewhere in between, the thought of living in roguish freedom is certainly appealing to many. If you are hoping to find somewhere free from the shackles of law in our world today, here are some places you might want to investigate.
In September of 1961, President John F. Kennedy sent a letter to the country. Published in an issue of Life magazine, he wrote, "My fellow Americans, nuclear weapons and the possibility of nuclear war are facts of life we cannot ignore today." End quote. He went on to say, because of that threat, the U.S. was going to start building fallout shelters across America. Believe it or not, that project began here in Boise, and that shelter is for sale, but not for the first time. We take you back in time with a segment we're calling the 208 Redial.
It was 1960, the height of the Cold War, and Boise decided to go somewhat underground, carving the country's first community fallout shelter out of the hills near a new housing development known as the Highlands. The Federal Civil Defense Administration kicked in $122,000 for its construction, a prototype that would spawn thousands of others coast to coast. Called the Highlands Community Shelter, Governor Robert Smiley cut the ribbon in 1961, with Boise families helping to stock it and take a tour of the dormitories and decontamination showers. It was built to save 1,000 people, but not just anyone. If needed, you and your family could gain access for $100. Then in 1972, it was sold to the Boise School District, who used it for office and storage space. Jump ahead to 2003 as we jump back to a story we did nearly 17 years ago, with the school district looking to unload it.
It's served many, many years. It still has a lot of life left in it, and it's up for sale for $125,000.
It sold for $150,000, bought back then by Boise businessman John Farron.
These blueprints will show the actual structure.
The 14,000 square feet left him a lot of room to spare, which is why he's been lending it to local bands looking for a place to practice. John is now hoping to sell the former fallout shelter.
And again, it's structurally sound, very solid.
And according to John and Zillow, this 4 large bedroom, 3 bath with individual stalls, 2-story mid-century, almost modern home.
Light, airy. You can walk on your roof. You can mountain bike on your roof as well.
Can be yours for $2.1 million.
Also in that real estate listing, it says it's very energy efficient. It's because it was meant to keep out radiation. Well, for factual sake, everyone likes to call it a bomb shelter because it's just fun to say, but it is actually a fallout shelter.
Any thoughts on your side, Vessel 2?
Just listening to you, it reminds me of how things should be. And I believe we rely on their system, regardless if we're vaccinated or not. And we have lost connection to nature. And I believe this pandemic is exposing globally how their system has been set up in a weak manner. And yeah, you should be now looking at how to from this point going forward, how to maneuver and stay on code as far as what you're doing and why you're doing it, and what we should be doing, from what it seems like, is going back to nature, as you just brought up, bartering. I don't know about you personally, but I've always kind of been my ear in the prepping world, where, you know, I would just listen to people always talk about, for example, getting bug out bags and having medical emergency supply kits in the house, in the car, stocking up on 6 months, year or to a yearly supply of water, possibly trying to save seeds or buy seeds that are natural and not GMO seeds if you can, and trying to set yourself up to where you have wiggle room just in case you need to abandon their system.
Agreed. So, in other words, it's no time like the present to become self-reliant or self-sufficient for tomorrow and the future. Again, like you said, having the supplies needed, the medicines, the seeds, or any form of utensils or items needed to be prepared for this future shock that's going to come. It's inevitable, and it's going to come. So the question is, are we ready? For those that's going to be on the opposite side of the fence, are you prepared? So if you have any comments or you have any ideas, please share, like, subscribe call us, let us know. Um,
Today, the challenges are just enormous.
We know that a fractured society will not be good for growth, will not be good for sustainable development.
We need better equality, better democracy. We cannot rely on the idea that technology will solve everything.
Vast parts of populations have been left behind.
This is not a world that we want. We don't want it for ourselves and we don't want it for our children and grandchildren.
Digital transformation creates tremendous opportunities, but it also creates challenges. We're constantly dealing with the changes that wields for our society. Who has power, who doesn't, who has voice and who doesn't.
And civil society has an immense amount to offer to ensure that the technologies are implemented in a way consistent with broader societal goals.
Technology should be in the service of human beings, in the service of values, in the service of families.
Jobs will be destroyed and new types of jobs will be created, but 90% of these new jobs in the digital economy are very low remunerated and very low protected.
People are losing trust in each other. How do we bring credibility back to the conversation?
There's a tendency to think the market can solve these things, but the practical reality is for very low-income families, the market doesn't work very well. And so our focus now is how do we make the market work for the disenfranchised?
Civil society is embedded in communities, working with some of the most vulnerable groups around the world.
We are the citizens that participate in decisions and that should be aware and willing and committed to defend civil rights, human rights.
There are some very, very good examples of people using technology for democratic purposes. It's not whether people are keeping up, it's whether we are thoughtful about shaping a future where people matter.
Civil society plays an incredibly important role in holding governments to account.
It really is a way of bringing the voice of the community and the residents that we're trying to serve into those conversations.
And without them, we cannot find any solution.
The most innovation happening in business, in government, and in civil society is when the three work together.
You can't do development without partnership. We will never have the funds nor the capabilities to be able to do this on our own.
21st century growth cannot be built by any one sector. It is absolutely necessary that collaboration happen.
In the Africa context, with all the challenges we have, it was civil society, private sector who have come to take action.
A modern society does well when it really tries to capitalize on the social and ethical potential that there is in civil society.
Some of the things that we have learned at the forum really help connect with potential future partners.
Here you have government, private sector and civil society in the same room, having a discussion, advancing the agenda of the world.
To develop opportunities, develop new models, whether you're talking about climate or you're talking about education or you're talking about health or you're talking about economic development.
It's also an opportunity to influence the people who can make a difference as we try to address some of the real challenges. There's going to be movement from realization to action.
The World Economic Forum is a partner for all of us in civil society fighting for a better world.
Any additional information you would like to put out there? That's up to.
Yeah, I believe the questions you pose are serious and on time, and I believe a lot of people, especially in the Western world, have relied on the system, and I would say a lot of people are not prepared. And if the role model as far as controlling societies go, as far as digital, then they've already thrown China out there as they're the shining light. And we really don't hear any insight from China itself, the people, on how their system is working for them. We have more or less a biased view coming out of the Western world, and everything seems to be against China, blaming China for whatever the reasons. And no one really wants to discuss that it's the Western world's policies that set China up to be who China is. China is made in America for the most part. But if that is the shining example, then we can kind of see, as far as the digital game, how it's being played, and they really don't have any freedoms. They have heavy surveillance as far as cameras being everywhere, facial recognition being used everywhere. They have more or less a cashless system, so everything is done via their smartphones or their mobile phones. Even the older generations seem to be pretty nifty with their mobile devices. And on one hand, it's kind of good that they're able to use the technology, but you can see how this technology is being used in a bad way as well. So keeping your eye on China is, I would say, very important as far as how they're being controlled.
Peace to everybody listening, everybody who viewed. We appreciate you. Once again, leave a comment below. Until next time, stay safe. Peace.
Peace.